Perfect. Alright. Let's get started. So... Vaseraga. How would I classify this character? So... So Vaseraga, pretty accurate to his size, is definitely like a big body powerhouse character. Generally, as you can see by the scythe, he sports a lot of range. Generally, like, far L, yeah, far M, like, generally, like, the range on these normals are massive. But what makes the normals truly dangerous on top of all this is that not only does he sport the range, but he also has, like, really high priority. Like, because one thing that's unique to Vaseraga is that almost all of his scythe normals do not follow normal priority rules. So, far L, for example, has the priority of a medium normal. It's a little bit hard to see because of how big he is, but as you can see, his far L is crushing Vaseraga's far L so long as, like, they're both all, like, hitting on the same frame. This is mainly because his far L has the priority of a medium normal, and it just goes up from there. This will be far M. Well, wait, too early. There we go. Crush. This has the priority of a heavy. And then far H. Let me see if I don't mess this one up. Yeah, crush. Yeah, it has even higher priority. So, like, all these standing normals along with 2U all do not follow normal priority rules. Crush. Yeah, they all have a point higher than what they usually would be. So, what this lets him do is that it's very easy for this man to score counter hits. And counter hits is generally what he's all built around. He's probably the character that benefits the most out of counter hitting the opponent. He also sports the command throw, which gives him above average mix-up compared to other characters, so he doesn't have to, like, rely as much on, like, normal throwing and playing the late throw game. Like the late throw tech game. Ugh. Words. Generally, being close to him is not the best position to be in. So, like, if you block too much, he can force you to, like, respond just if he just keeps chucking you. Alright. So generally, you're generally going to be playing around these buttons, the fireball, and his stance to command throw to force the opponent into, like, really bad situations and make them guess. And when you guess right, you start throwing the party. Now, in terms of basic strengths and weaknesses, as I covered earlier, it's like his normals are abnormal in terms of clash priority, so he's really good at stuffing buttons. Sports really good range. Very few characters can outrange him. Has a unique mechanic with armor. As you can see the icon up there, that's Soulforge. This allows him to have armor on very specific attacks. And he can generally take advantage of this armor to, like, throw a wrench in the character's poking game and general mid-range. So when he has this up, the opponent has to be very careful when he comes to, like, putting buttons down the field. Has a fireball. Well, while it does not go full screen, it only goes, like, roughly half screen. His fireball is unique in the fact that he can keep throwing the fireball as soon as it leaves the screen, so long as you do the technical input. So that part is unique to him. Next pro is chip damage. He has a very strong chip gain thanks to how his specials work. So let me turn off health recovery. So while his fireball does about as much chip as you would expect, his other special moves, however, do quite a sizable amount. Like his tackles, like do like a really healthy chunk. Like that's the light, medium, and then of course the EX. Oh, he was. I forgot how to set the default. But yeah, it's like all tackles do great chip. And then all stance moves also do great chip. Because not only do the stance follow-ups do chip, but the steps all do chip. So simply blocking 2 steps into a C follow-up does about as much as you getting hit by a fireball. So wait, let me set it to, at the first hit, fireball. Fireball is about 800 damage, and that's around how Grant's health bar will look. So let me set the block now. I'm going to do 2 steps and the C follow-up. That's about as much as getting hit by a fireball. And if you only do 1 step into it, it's just under about as much as a fireball would do if you got hit by it. So his chip game is very strong, combined with the fact that he also has the command throw to work with. Command throw is 2,000 damage. If you do it with simple input, it's the same amount as doing a normal throw. Except they can't tech it, of course. Last but not least is obviously... Actually, I can't even say last but not least. There's actually a few more. The threat of stance RPS in most matchups. With the exception of one character, generally every character gets put in a really nasty guessing situation when stance is in play. Because when he goes into stance, he forces the opponent to play a really nasty RPS game. I'll go into more details once I start talking more about stance, but generally, if you get counter hit by the stance options, you could potentially lose the game right there, which leads into the next point, is his damage output. His damage output in general is quite high in a lot of situations. While his damage off of, say, jabs is fairly average in comparison with the rest of the cast, he's one of the few characters that actually can get mid-screen damage. And counter hits on top of that mattering a lot more for him than it does for other characters. So say... Because one important tidbit for him is that landing sweep for him matters more than for other characters because of how his stance special move works. So... But generally he can land sweep, EX stance, and on some characters you get far L EX fireball. Now the last part of the combo is character specific. However, if they do not have a DP, you can take advantage of the fact that you can air reset them right here into more chip damage. While I'm dropping it. And it does like a really healthy chunk. Generally... Last but not least is generally, like, thanks to the fact that he gets command throw, the stance, and his frame advantage on his normals. This forced him to having really strong offense. As I'll get into a bit more detail about his close normals in a minute, is that his plus frames are very strong. It's like close L is +3, close M is +3. And then he has Crouch Jab for +2. EX Fireball at point blank is +6. And then Fireball, of course, at slight distance is plus unblock as well. So he has a lot of plus frames to work with. Now, in terms of weaknesses, one is, of course, his size gets him in trouble. He's very wide, and probably the tallest character in the game. So it's kind of hard for him to avoid stuff. Walk speed is garbage. Run speed is garbage. So generally, thanks to the walk speed and the run speed, he's generally going to be the one that has to swing first in the mid-range situations. Generally, his pokes outside of far L have a sizable amount of recovery, so he's generally pretty vulnerable to getting whiff punish. Like, but yeah, it's like very vulnerable to get him whiff punish due to recovery on his normals. Hurt boxes are still fairly large despite the range. Anti-air, his anti-air, while it's strong, very strong hitbox-wise, he has the slowest 2H at 13 frames. So anti-airing on reaction is not the easiest thing in comparison to the other characters. However, thanks to the size of his anti-air, you have to play around him a bit differently. Also, on another note of his mobility, is that his roll, in comparison to the other characters, while it does not take longer than other characters like Ladiva, his roll is very pathetic in terms of distance. This can make it a bit hard for him when he's particularly dealing with, like, say, Fairy in some specific situations, and Matera when they actually know what they're doing when he's, like, standing at not far H range. If he's at this range, he has a decent amount of options. However, if he does not have armor, his options against zoning can be fairly limited. He has no frame 1 reversal option without meter. And his supers are slow enough to get options selected mid block string and on wake up. He has no 5 frame normal on top of this, so he can particularly get bullied on defense. His defense is some of the worst in the game, particularly without armor. Yeah, last but not least, his overall attack speed is, of course, slow. If he's going to be sporting all this range, he's generally going to be fairly slow on the normals. Like 5H, for example, is 19 frames. Far L's 8, which is like pretty in line for medium buttons. Like Far M's 11, which is... This is generally the speed of like H buttons that sport more range than average. But due to some of these issues in particular, he can have issues against, say, Percival, for example. Catalina, when they really know how to play, can give him issues. Lancelot can be a problem. Charlotta, as I'll get into a bit later on, is an issue mainly due to how her defensive options work. And in general, this stuff requires you to lab a bit more than your average character. He's similar to Fairy in the fact that his overall toolkit is a bit weird and requires lab work. So if you're not willing to lab and like take a few losses in the beginning, you're not really going to get results. But yeah, now that I covered all of that, we can start talking a bit about normals. So we'll take it from the top. So far L is like it's technically a medium button because of how, as I talked about earlier with Clash priority, is +1 on block. So in these situations, you can far L most of the cast, and they can't really do much about it. Despite how the normal looks, it's not the easiest thing to low profile for a lot of characters. Like Grand can low profile at like around max range, but if he's any closer than that, he's not really low profiling. But yeah, if he's any closer than that, he's not really low profiling. But generally is a really strong normal. This is like your low commitment poke. At around halfway in, at close range, you can get a fireball. And at farther ranges, you can get EX stance. Far M, it's 11 frames. Sports a lot of range and has heavy priority. One of the big things about it, though, is that yeah, low profiling it is again pretty difficult to do, unless it's like at around max range. Yeah, generally low profiling is kind of hard unless you're at like max range. At that range, you like, for example, Grant can low profile at like around max range, but at around max range, his 2U's not really hitting. So against characters like, say, Narmaya, he generally does a decent job at like stuffing the buttons. So he's like a lot less guesswork in terms of which button he needs to press. On normal hit, he can get EX Fireball at like the closer ranges. However, at slightly farther ranges, you're gonna need to go into EX stance, and then at really far ranges, you're not really getting much. You're just getting the button. And then far H, it's 19 frames. It'll stuff pretty much any normal in the game. However, this button has a lot of quirks on top of the Clash priority, which makes it probably his most important button. Like a lot of the other H normals, this one can't really be low profile. So it'll generally hit people that are like hitting like Narmaya 2U, Grand 2U, Vegeta 2U. You can generally like hit them for trying to like go all the way to the floor. Generally, once you get good at spacing this button, at the farther ranges of this button, this is generally where tackle will be plus on block. Generally, it's also generally perfect range to use stance moves to chip. Also doubles the perfect range for allow you to chip with fireballs if you're not fighting Percival or they have super. This normal, along with his other H normals, can be held. And if held all the way, it's 39 frames, so he can delay it up to 20 frames. If you charge it just slightly, it'll give the move armor, along with works the same way with his other H normals. if you hold it for just a little bit, you'll give it armor. And it'll have armor for the rest of the active frames and startup. On normal hit, you'll get EX Fireball up until around halfway. Yeah, you'll get EX Fireball until about halfway through the hitbox. If you're a bit farther away than that, then the most you're gonna do is like try to sport some free chip. On counter hit, however, it's a bit different. Because due to the way counter hits work in this game, the higher the priority on the move, like if the move's like considered like a medium, you'll get a sizable amount of untech. This applies to a lot of Vasaraga's normals, so because his light is considered a medium, his far M is considered a heavy, and then far heavy is like in his own tier. So for far heavy, this allows him to basically raw confirm any far H into pretty much any special he wants, aside from of course command throw. You have enough time to visually confirm it hitting the opponent, and then you'll like always get a fireball if you're lowballing it. If you're really good at confirming, you can hit confirm EX tackle every time. Oh, my cat just came in. One moment. Alright, sorry about that. But, alright, yeah, I was talking about, like, counter hitting. Yeah, far H, you can generally, on counter hit, you have forever to confirm something. Preferably, you want to get M or EX tackle for the damage. However, it's very easy to confirm into a fireball if you just need to like lowball it. If you recognize you are decently close, you can confirm in the L. You can confirm in the L stance, walk up in the stance heavy for max damage. You can also just go straight in the M follow up at farther ranges if you don't have tackle. Right. Whoopsie. Tweets PC. But yeah. But yeah, as for far M, it's like a similar deal, except the main thing for damage will be light tackle, but you can confirm it to a fireball if you want. But yeah. Now let's talk about the close normals. So, but yeah, close L is +3 on block. However, the one thing that's unique about Vasaraga's close L is that it is the only it's the only close L in the game that can still OS 7 frame DPs when done meaty. It takes a bit of practice to do, but if you learn how to do it, it makes your offense a lot scarier when they're waking up. Even I still drop it sometimes, so I'm going to try to get this in as few attempts as possible. Okay, yeah, let me just try to see if I can do this. Yes. See, that was That was a midi close L. Yeah, then you can just go from there. But yeah, it's like... You have a really strong meaty tool. Generally a bread butter of your offense. But yeah, close M... Close M is 8 frame startup, but it's also +3 on block as along with his close L. This makes it that he is the only character in the game that can do close M, and frame trap 5 frame characters. Yeah, he's the only character that can do this still. But actually, let me get Lancelot just to give you a more accurate one. I hate PS4 low times. Whoa. Okay. Yeah, Crush. There you go. Yeah. Yeah, he's pretty much the only character left that can do this. So if you really want to do this, that's a good way to go about it. On counter hit, he gets a lot of options. So, on counter hit, he can do close M. But let's say it was the second close M that counted. Let's say it was the second close M that got the counter hit right there. So, you have options. You can go in the far M. You can go in the far M in this situation if you really want to. If you were doing like jab close M, you can also do close heavy if you were microdashing on the close L. And of course, you can go into 2M, which is generally the way you'll do max damage mid-screen. Yeah, if that works on that character, you can do that combo. Otherwise, you're generally going to be doing this. Let me turn off health regeneration so you can just see the combo along with the chip. Yeah, roughly 35%. On crouching counter hit, you can get 2U, which is even more damage mid-screen. Lots of damage. Next is close H. So let me switch these characters back around. So put Gran, since he generally has every tool I need to talk about for the most part. Okay, close H is 14 frames startup. This makes it so that generally you're not really gonna be frame trapping it with this normal in the normal sense. So like no like close L and the close heavy and stuff like that. Because the only way there's generally not a lot of reasonable ways to like get enough frame advantage where the close H would like frame trap on like something that you do on block. This normal, however, does have specific purposes that it's good for. One pretty subtle one is that it's one of his best normals for like doing like it's one of his best ways of doing a delayed normal to catch people doing like fuzzy mashing or like fuzzy jumping like 171, like, and by fuzzy mashing I mean like delayed mashing. So like, let's say on wake up, like you knock them down, you think they're gonna do like a delayed 2L because they're expecting you to meaty, or they're expecting like a throw attempt. You can just like wake them up, see them wake up, do a close H, and you can just like body the fuzzy mash attempt or the fuzzy jump attempt. If it's blocked, it's -4, but you still have your cancel options and your auto combo options. Another abnormal thing is that this normal has 22 frames of block stun on it. So, reason why I bring this up is that it can limit some responses that your opponent can do to specific things. The two specific things are EX Command Throw and normal stance. Their options to deal with these two situations shift a little bit compared to like if you say did like close M or like close L, because of the 22 frames of block stun. Due to this, if the character does not have a 6-frame normal, or they decide to not match that 6-frame normal, the command throw will the EX command throw will actually beat it out. You need a 5-frame normal or faster to actually mash on this, or they have to jump like a normal person would, like jump, DP, like any of those other options. And for stance, what the 22 frames of block stun means is that he can actually frame trap you using normal stance. So with normal stance, you can do close H into 22LL immediately, and it'll frame trap 5-frame buttons. And let me just get Lancelot just to show that I am not talking out of my ass. Because he's getting pushed out of proximity normal range. Oh, I think I messed it up. Yeah, crush. In the corner, that leads to a sizable amount of damage if I do the right combo anyway. Why I'm not doing the right combo. I am bugging right now. Yeah, okay, there you go. Combo looks something like that. But generally, close H in the universal overhead is also randomly a frame trap. Yeah, if they're just like outright guessing right here, then like close H. Then like close H to universal overhead will frame trap if they're just outright guessing. But generally, yeah, it's not the most obviously useful normal, but it has a lot of use that you can use it for. Like this was like close section light fireball is generally true block string. If you delay it slightly, it frame traps. Wow, I'm dropping the combo. Dropping the combo. Man. Yeah, the uses for that one are a bit more subtle. But yeah, all the other H normals, you can hold this one down as well. If you have Soulforge, it'll get armor if you do this. Crouching normals, 2L. The main thing you need to know about 2L is that it is as fast as normal at 6 frames. So yeah, main mashing option in terms of speed. It chains into close L. It chains into close L. Combos into 2L2. It's only +2 on block, however, so you need to be a little bit careful about how you do things. The main reason why you would want to use 2L over close L on offense is that if you are, for example, fighting Fairy or Charlotta on net play, unless the close L is meaty, the second close L can end up getting DP'd. So let's say I did this on I got in. I didn't knock him down though, so like the close L wasn't meaty. They'll be able to DP that. However, if you do 2L close L, they get cooked because of the chain. So this is also a really good compromise for net play when you can't time your meaties properly. Because it doesn't matter if it's meaty or not, you can just do it. But yeah, that's like generally the main reason why you would do close, like 2L outside of a defensive situation. Um, 2M. Yeah, this is one of Vasaraga's only low options. However, one important thing about this is that it acts like a sweep when you hit the opponent. Let me turn this off. I was practicing something else. There's like... Yeah, it acts just like a sweep. Which is abnormal compared to a lot of other characters. Even though he also does have a traditional sweep. But yeah, it's like... This low is pretty slow at 9 frames, but it has massive reward on hit. Pretty much all of his best mid-screen combos come from 2M at being in some point in the combo. Like 2M or 2U. It's also probably his best mash option if you're like trying to like fiend for reward on like say a run up. Like if they're like trying to run up from here or something like that. If a 2M counter hits, then you can like end the game in a lot of situations. Like without super mid-screen, the counter hit sweeps 4K. So even though it's not fast or like have like abnormal priority, the raw reward makes it a scary button to get hit by. And then if they have super, they can of course just hit the super, and on counter hit he gets SSBA. Last but not least is that due to one of the recent patches, he generally cannot check jump startup with a button into 2M unless like the button prior was a meaty, because you need a bit more frame advantage. +3 isn't enough to stop them. I am messing up badly. Oh man, I am messing up so bad right now. Yeah, there you go. If it's a meaty close L, then not only can you frame trap, but you can also check jump. Otherwise, if it's not meaty, they can technically jump the low, but most people will not jump the low. At least not on purpose, anyway. Mainly due to the fact that he has all the other normals would check jump properly. And he can actually get better combos due to the fact that you did jump. Switch back to Grand so we get a character with normal jump startup. Okay, but oh, I have him set the jab. So yeah, let's say they try to jump here. Wow, I'm dropping everything today. Oh yeah, 5.8K. Mid-screen obviously is not going to be to that crazy extent, but you still can go in the super. But yeah. Yeah, that's about it for when it comes to the 2M. Now 2H. But yeah, 2H. It's 13 frames startup, which is probably makes it like the slowest anti-air in the game. Well, the slowest 2H in the game, I should say. The hitbox is massive. Because, like, look at how high it's hitting Grand. It goes way up there. The reward on hit is also very high, because even on normal hit, you can do things like this. So yeah, if you have stance ready, you can generally take half their life, or even just looking at you funny in the air. Now, on counter hit, it's like you probably lose. I'm pretty sure a lot of you see me hit people with the speedrun strat. $5.6K. And that's not even max damage, that's just a consistent combo. So, like, let's say I, like, get... Yeah, without super, you're generally gonna get around 5.7. with super is going to be around 6,000 damage. There's a few, like, hard combos you can do that you, like, try to get a lot of damage along with full animation super, but you don't need to go too crazy. But just like a... Let me see if I can do, like, one of the hard ones. Whoops. But yeah, generally, if I added the super at that point, it would be around... I don't think this super's gonna hit. Yes, not. If that super hits around 6.3, I want to say. Say hypothetical. Yeah. It'll be around like 6.3 if I'm like doing my math correctly. But generally, you can just stick with this combo and be fine mostly. Oh wow, I got the super. 7,000 damage. Usually you're not gonna get the sweep if you do that version. Yeah, usually you're not gonna get the 2M at the end if you do that version of the anti-hero route. Usually will get the sweep if they do it too high up. But if you don't get cutscenes around 6.6. But yeah, the reward, very high. Hitbox, very good. However, it is slow. And while the hitbox is really good, it does have a blind spot. Ooh. Okay, there. Hyman. So, right around the top of his head, there's no hitbox right there. So, if you're decently close to him and you jump, you can still body him, even if you don't have an anti-air bait. So let's say Grand jumps right around, like around here, like cross-up range. You would have to 2H early in order for 2H to hit that. But if you 2H on reaction, you're not gonna make it. This is also assuming that they know how to time their button. And not me being dumb. It's like generally you'll have to either time the 2H really well or use something else. And then, last but not least, like just like all the other H normals, it can be charged. The charge will give it armor. However, for this normal in particular, it has like really strong uses in neutral in some matchups. Beelzebub is like a really easy example. Because I'm pretty sure all y'all had to deal with this at some point, right? Like, the boss player just deciding to jump at you. If you have armor, we'll just take a lot of that guessing out. Like, when he has armor, he doesn't have to deal with this. All you have to do is just make sure you let go on time. If you hold it too long, he might go over you. But when you have armor, he's not allowed to jump at you. At all. And hold 2H is the greedy answer. But I'll get to that when I talk a bit more about Soulforge. But yeah. Last but not least in terms of normals is 2U. This is a 16 frame sweep. However, main two things about this one is that the range is only slightly less. Yeah, it's only slightly less than 5H while being 3 frames faster. Has a bit less recovery than 4H as well. Because like 4H has 30 frames of recovery. 2U on the other hand only has 24. While sporting all this range. However, in comparison to 4H, it does not have the abundance of active frames that 4H has. Because 4H has 6, 2U only has 3. So you still need to be decently precise in comparison. On hits, you're mainly going into EX stance if you need a combo. If you need a combo, you're usually going to be going to EX stance. Otherwise, you're going to tackle in. You're going to tackle in and take your own. Yeah, otherwise you're going to tackle in and get your Oki, be it meaty, go in the stance, whatever you want to do. Yeah, that's about it for the normals. Now, before I go in the specials, I'm going to talk a bit about Soulforge. So, Soulforge is also the name of his 5U. Oh yeah, I got the good voice line too. Sakui! Okay, but as you see, when he has the purple aura around him, and he has the icon right under his super meter, and just past the icons, that means he has access to Soulforge. Now, what Soulforge does is that it adds 2 hits of armor to specific moves that he has. So the moves in question are B and EX Tackle. All versions of Stance along with the follow-ups. Charged H normals, that means all of them, like as I said earlier. And when you press 5U again, this will have armor on it. And just to give a bit of example. Yeah, there you go, armor. So, yeah, those are all the moves and effects. Yeah, all the moves gain 2 hits of armor. But now I'm going to talk about a few common things. So, I'm going to need Vaseraga on the other side now. Let's do, let's say Jita. Let's use Jita. She's a pretty common character. At least in the States. So, one common question I get about armor is the amount of damage he takes. So, he does not take full damage when he armors something. So, like, that's about as much the 4H will do to him. Now, I'm going to tell him to go in the stance. takes considerably less damage. Roughly half the damage. This makes it so that he can often win the damage trades when he's like armoring through your stuff. But yeah, it's like, yeah, he'll take considerably less, and if he's right on what you were doing, he'll plow through and do more damage to you than what you did to him in most situations. Let's see. What's another? Armor will generally kick in on frame 5. Oh no. Well, actually, that works for what I need to do. So, like, neutron block into close L. Yeah, 5 frames. Yeah, 5 frame gap, so the armor kicks in on time. This is like +2 into like a 6 frame close M, so 4 frame gap. He gets bodied. So when he has armor, be sure to, like, when you're frame trapping, make sure it's like decently tight. Because you don't want to have to actually deal with this. Another important tidbit is that you are not helpless when your move gets armored. However, whatever or not you want to act or not, after seeing the move makes contact with armor greatly depends on what you hit it with, how long the normal, like how long the move has before it makes contact with you, and what your cancel options are. So, like, let's say, let's just like use you for example, because like really easy one. So, like, I'm doing this. Like, I'm doing this. I can choose if I want to cancel or not. Because, like, if you recognize what's about to happen, generally, you can attempt to make the read, or you can just take, like, this little bit of damage that will happen when he does, like, whatever armor move he's hitting you with. So, for Vaseraga, it would be Stomp into Stance C is, like, 2.5k. So, if you're like Ren or Jita, since their EXDP works roughly the same, if you recognize it on time, you can technically go into EXDP. However, this is on the assumption that the Vaseraga is just trying to, like, wait to confirm the hit. If they say they saw... So if they say they saw this happen, they recognize the situation, and you shown that you're, like, willing to DP here, they can just stance you here, and then not only are you down a cooldown, but you probably they probably did more damage to you than what you did to them. So if you say, yo, I'm just like, you're like, my neutral's looking real nice, I'm about to bust out, I'm gonna do EX Rekka, and the Vaseraga said, I'm just gonna do this. Like, generally, you're gonna get hit no matter what. What's going to change is whenever or not you're going to eat 5,000 damage, or if you're just gonna eat like 2,000 damage. So if you're like a Vegeta, you see this get armored, and you see that stance H about to come down, please do not keep going. Just stop there and take the 2,000 damage. Don't just want to take 5k. If your normal's the thing that's making contact, then you can go for the guessing game depending on your character's options. Vegeta's EXDP is a decent option overall. But that's if you're willing to spend the cooldown. Otherwise, you can just take like the 2,000 damage, and then you just like guess on the DP when they're like running the offense. Then that's another option for characters to have a DP like Vegeta. One last thing is that how the hit stop on your move works greatly determines the Vasaraga's options when they're armoring through. So I'm gonna need Vaseraga on my side for this. So I'm gonna put Vegeta over here, and I'm gonna put Vas over here. Okay. So let's compare like some real like multi-hit moves that are like 3 hits or more. Rekka technically falls into this category. So yeah, let's do that. So Rekka, you can do up to 5 hits, but I'm just mainly gonna show the first 4. So, as you can tell, there are like gaps in the hits where you'll like see the character reel properly in between each hit. So for moves like multi-hit moves like these, he can act in between the hits when he has armor. Which is why I said, if you're doing something like Rekka, just stop at the whatever part that's making contact. Don't just recklessly keep going. You'll just give him free counter hits. And then you take 7,000 damage, you're gonna be mad, and you're gonna say, oh, this character's mad cheat. So if you do something like, say, EX Fireball, as you can see at my inputs, yeah, my stance L isn't even coming out in between the hits. It's like, the EX Fireball is hitting so fast and has just enough hit stop so that I can't properly respond when I'm getting hit. This makes moves like this very effective against armor. This is pretty much every EX Fireball, Charlotta EX DP, Narmaya's counter technically works like this, but that's only up until it gets to the first hit. The second hit onwards, he can act. Let me see. What else? I think those are like all the like really important ones. Yeah, because like those are technically EX fireballs. Yeah, so like all EX fireballs and like EX DP and like Charlotta's EX DP. Oh, I'm doing fine, Searchlight. I'm just like doing the strain. So, oh wait, I'm stupid. But yeah, generally, if you're the Vaseraga player, you're gonna need to study up on which moves do this and how, and you need to like structure how you use armor accordingly. So, like Jita, for example, she has the EX Fireball, but when EX Fireball is down, she doesn't really have much to deter armor, aside from DP, but that's not going to deter stance armor. So stance in neutral when she doesn't have her EX Fireball is actually quite effective. So another difference is Fairy. Fairy has like a good amount of multi-hit moves that can deal with armor. However, not only are they short-ranged, but they're also not the fastest on startup. So they're all like preemptive answers. So stance armor is actually really strong against her because it forces her to guess. The only times where she doesn't really have to guess on stance armor in neutral that hard is if Gigi is already in play. If Gigi's already in play, or if she has super, then she doesn't really have to worry about it. Matera has 2 EX Fireballs, so so stance in neutral against her is fairly weak. However, armor's applications as like an anti-air check to check the airspace, just due to how stance works, is actually quite strong because of how big the buttons are. Armor against her is generally good when you're standing at around her far H range. You generally want to be in a spot where she's forced to actually start using her normals. Because if you use armor here, it's actually quite strong. Because she has to guess what you're going to do. She has to make a move. And if she blocks it, she's in a really bad guessing situation. She has no DP, no 5-frame. Supers can get blown up. All that good stuff. So generally, you have to look at the character's options on a matchup-to-matchup basis and see which ones you want to like prefer a default to. in terms of like the 5U itself, there are a decent amount of opportunities where you can buff up. So let's say one really common opportunity for you to buff up is generally whenever a fireball lands. But yeah, like whenever a fireball lands, let me set, yeah, recovery set to normal. So light against Ladiva in particular, the fireball one you have to be a little bit careful about. Because if you don't, like, do it properly, she can technically super you. You need to make sure that you, like, do it at the proper timing so you don't get supered. But from B Fireball, you'll generally be minus after the Soulforge, after you get your armor. So they'll have the initiative. On Light Fireball, you'll be plus, but you won't be that plus. And you'll generally be full screen. So you just have to, like, make your way in and adjust your strategy from there. Another common one is generally when most of your stance moves land. This is not so much due to frames, but mainly due to spacing. Because let's say you hit like a stance L, you're pretty much getting blown back full screen. At most ranges you would hit this. So even if you're technically punishable, you're not in range. Due to one of the recent patches, they reduced 5U's total frames. So stuff like this doesn't really happen that often anymore. Because this particular used to be pretty common, but now, not so. Now it doesn't really happen. You can just get the armor. They just get time to, like, make their way in while you're recovering. Stance M is not so much, it's not as much of a good idea, mainly due to the fact that they don't go as far back as with Stance L. Stance H, same thing. Unless it's EX, you really don't want to do it. The next really easy one is pretty much any hard knockdown. So long as you time the 5U properly, you'll be plus. And get a meaty, and get like a normal where they can't mash on you. But yeah, any hard knockdown, you'll always get an armor, and you'll always be plus. Unless you, for some reason, did not do the 5U immediately. That's the only time where you really won't be plus when you get a hard knockdown when you do this. Yeah, because, like, yeah, you do this. You're so far back, though, that it doesn't really matter. That's probably the only exception. Because Bloody Moon's knockdown, even though it's a hard knockdown, is pretty bad. Yeah, because like even with technical input, like the frame advantage is bad, so you have to be mindful about that. Aftermath. So long as you do technical input, you should be able to get your armor just fine. But I would just be careful. Like, Fairy could probably still hit you. As for the 5U strike itself, when you have armor, it becomes a decent anti-air because the hitbox is all around him. Let me see if I can... Oh yeah, that's her phone. Okay. So yeah, if you think they're going for like nasty cross-up, you can use Armored 5U as an anti-air if you don't feel like timing the 2H properly. You won't get a combo unless it counter hits, but if you hit them with it like that and they bounce right back to you, they'll be in command grab range. It is, however, double-digit minus on block, so I would be careful. And of course, if it hits, you're like plus 13. On normal hit, you're like plus 13. You can do 5U, 2H, EX stance for almost 4,000 damage. On counter hit, you get even more frame advantage, so now you could get up to 2U. Let me try to get max range. Never mind, you can get close H. Yeah, you can get up to close H, but generally the preferred way to follow up is to get close H. So like 5U, close H, super. Alright. That's pretty much all the stance moves. We talked about armor. Now let's talk about some special moves. Now let's Gran. Yeah, let's use Gran. So I think the first thing on the list first thing on the list we probably need to talk about is the Fireball. So his Fireball, the light one, is -3 on block at point blank range. Is also the slowest normal Fireball in the game at 22. Well, yeah, so his Fireball's 22 frames, so it's like offline you can like see it coming and plan accordingly, but generally the important points is that it has really good light one has really good frame advantage on block. Generally around, I want to say here. Yeah, right around here, it'll be plus on block. And then and further back you go, the more plus it gets. Just like any normal Fireball. However, as I mentioned earlier, one really important tidbit about his Fireball is that it does not matter where you were or where the Fireball is. As soon as he recovers, the Fireball will be ready to throw again. So I was like, so I can just keep going. Doesn't matter. I can just keep doing it. This generally makes it so that he can just like, he has access to all his options when he needs them. So it's like, let's say he's like at around this range, and he's like, so he's like, Fireball, 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 Fireball. It's like he can just like keep going like Fireball, Fireball. Like I can just keep doing it immediately. Make a decision. Like Percival's, his Fireball cannot be rolled through. Yeah, it just gets hit. This goes for all versus the Fireball, by the way. They can't be rolled. Works just like Percival's in that regard. But yeah, when you have the plus frames here, you can generally target a lot of common responses in a general fireball war would be due to the range that you're standing at. So let's say the like you've been chucking fireballs for a little bit, or you made them like make contact with a fireball. You've shown that you're willing to do fireball, just like keep doing it. If the character has an EX fireball, 9 times out of 10, they're probably about to bust out theirs when you block it. Kind of like this. So, at around this range, against a large majority of the fireball characters with fireballs, you can do fireball, close H. I mean, far H. You just got a counter hit, and they're about to take like 3,000 damage. If you're farther than that, far H is probably not going to hit. Yeah, I'm just, like, example there is just getting bodied. I'm pressing the buttons too early. Choose the PC. Yeah. Generally at around this range is where it's best to do. If you're farther back, you can end up risking... Yeah, if you're too far back, you can end up risking your life, because that EX Fireball might hit you. If it's something like an EX Dwa or like an EX Boot from Gran, that's where doing Fireball into M Fireball comes into play. His M Fireball has a strike before he shoots it. However, despite having the strike, the Fireball comes out on frame 20 instead of frame 22, like his normal Fireball does. So like his M Fireball is faster in comparison. However, it also has a lot more recovery than his L Fireball, because it's minus at pretty much all ranges aside from max range. But you can use the M Fireball to check responses. So like, if they're trying to make the read on, like, let's say, let's say they're about to make the read. So yeah, around this timing. So that's a little early. It's a little hard to simulate this. So against Gran, like, you can risk 4M clashing and then he'll just like win the clash situation if you try to stuff it with buttons. If you don't have armor, one of your best options is generally just to shoot out an like an M or EX Fireball. Yeah, one of your best options could be like to throw an like a M or EX Fireball, but this mainly works when you're standing at the farther ranges. For Gran, you're probably gonna have to use EX. Yeah, I guess Gran, you're generally gonna have to use EX because his EX boot is like a bit abnormal in terms of speed. And you don't really want to clash with his in particular, due to the way he's positioned. Because if they dodge the Fireball at a decent time, it'll reduce your frame advantage, but you won't always be minus. You'll usually still be plus if they're far away enough. EX Fireball has the benefits of both. Oh, while also just being like really juiced up. So at point blank range, it's +6 on block. It's also 2 frames faster. Like the strike part is 2 frames faster than normal, so it's 9 frames. And the +6 on block gives you like a lot of room to work with, even at like the closer ranges. It also has more active frames than the other fireballs as well, so it lingers a bit near the end. So yeah, the plus frames, it's generally the best normal to do like 2L2L from. Like 2L2L, like that combos. It's generally his main combo center in the corner. Wow. Yeah, main combo center in the corner. And all that good stuff. In a good amount of matchups, you can afford to, like, pop it when you need it, when you, like, need to, like, put something on screen, or you need the extra pressure. But keep in mind, against some of, like, the brawler-type characters, like Soares and Ladiva, you might want to be considerate on when you use that fireball, because using the fireball will give them opportunities to get in. Much easier than normal, anyway. So yeah, next is tackle. So this is a charge motion. So it's like 4-6. So yeah, this is the light version. He has his face towards the screen. In version, he has his face away from the screen, his back towards the screen, and then EX. Where it's like pretty obvious the spot that that's an EX tackle. But light tackle has medium priority. Yeah, it's the same priority as the medium button. It's 19 frames startup, a ton of active frames. So what makes his forward advancing move stand out in comparison to everybody else, aside from like maybe... Yeah, his stands out mainly due to the fact that his have a lot of priority even if you don't EX them, because the light one, which is the safest one, has the same priority as a medium button, while like Charlotta, it has like very little, barely any priority on her EX one. She needs to use B-ball if she wants priority, which is much slower. But one of the big things is the amount of frame advantage he gets when he makes you block it. So at around here it's like safe-ish, but from just like a step or two back, it becomes plus. And he can make this very plus on block. It could be up to like +5, like the light version could be up to +5 or 7 in a neutral situation. It's generally pretty bad for them to block this. Then you combine that with the chip. Generally blocking these is not a good time. However, one weakness unique to this, though, in comparison to other forward advancing moves, is that it's decently weak to spot dodge. So let me set it to reversal action dodge. So really common situation is that they block 5H, they tackle in an attempt to get in. Because if you block a 5H from further out, if you block the tackle, they're plus on block there. Mashing theirs would be ill-advised if you blocked it. However, if you dodge the tackle and you don't dodge too late, you rob them the frame advantage. The light version is generally the one that you're going to see the most because it's the fastest one and it also gives the most plus frames. M tackle is a sizable amount slower. However, it boosts his higher priority and has higher reward when it hits. So slower at 26 frames, that's assuming you're point blank. Has more recovery at 19 frames, up from 15. But you get the extra distance. You get the extra distance, you get the extra priority, and you get like really good counter hit benefits in comparison to light. Because light tackle on counter hit, while you can get a combo off it in the corner, you need to be decently spaced for it. Like, so let's say I'm sitting back here. I get the counter hit. I can go into a combo. But if I do it from like, but let's say I like did it from like around here-ish, getting a combo is decently, getting a good combo can be a little difficult. But with B tackle, you don't really have to worry too much. If you like had the read and you're generally using it properly, you can get the combo whenever you really need to, due to the wall bounce. But due to the nature of these moves, you're usually going to be using this spaced out, so it's not going to come up. It's not going to come up too much. The fact that you can't combo off of them. Because it's just the main difference is that if M tackle counter hits, you can pretty much end the game if they were in the corner. So yeah, something like that can generally happen to you if you're not careful. Due to the extra recovery, generally M tackle will be punishable on spot dodge. In most of the common situations, they would have to get hit by a normal or something for it to not be punishable. So like, but this is where B tackle hold comes into play. So if you notice that they're flinch reacting, he can hold his tackle for like a decent amount of time. He can generally hold it for about 43 frames. Yeah, he can generally hold it for about 43 frames. So the slowest possible tackle would be, well, slowest possible M tackle is 78. Slowest possible H tackle would be 79. Just due to H tackle having one more frame of startup. So if they're flinching, you can hold it. Hold it for a little bit. Hit the recovery. Free them up. Or if they're like the type that like flinch react with DP. Oh, whoops. Yes, like same deal. Generally, if they know, you have to check them for stuff like this generally. It's not bad to do, just don't do it too often. Because if they don't flinch and they know to punish the tackles, if you hold it for too long, all they really have to do is jump and punish. Well, with most characters can jump and punish. But as soon as you start moving towards them, they'll spot dodge, and then you'll die. Now, next is H-Tackle. Obviously, this one does the most damage. However, unlike L and M Tackle, you can't... It's really hard to make this particular tackle plus. Just due to how it works. Because he does 2 tackles back to back. So in order for it to be making plus, you would have to do it from mad far back, and they would have to be walking back. It's not ideal. There isn't really an ideal situation to make it plus in neutral. You can, however, make it extremely plus in meaty situations. And when done as a meaty, it can be up to +7. Yeah, it can be up to a +7 on block guard crush. And if they blocked the guard crush crouching, you can get a full combo from said guard crush. I am like folding on this right now. Effectively, if they don't properly respond, that is half of your life gone from a command throw. If they're mid-screen... Whoops. If they're mid-screen and you hit them with it, then you get 2L on the super. Let me try to do that. Alright, the technical input this time. There we go. Yeah. So this is a very important knowledge check. So how do you respond in this situation? Well, if you have a DP, use it. If you have a DP, use it. You have all day to recognize that it's happening. However, if you do not have a DP, here's what you do. What you need to do is stand block it. Because if you stand block it, not only do you not have enough hit stun because you blocked it standing, so I don't get the bonus hit stun on crouching opponents, but you're also not as wide because you're standing, because you're usually wider when you're crouching. So he won't be able to combo off this. The most he'll get is the 2L, and then he's just gonna have to mix you from there. You'll just be taking roughly... Let me add up the damage. It's like around 3,000-ish? No, 2.8. It's around 2.8 in damage from the entire sequence. Well, it's much better than taking half your life. And I'm pretty sure some of you are wondering, what if I try to spot dodge on Wake Up? Here's what happens. Oh wait, I'm tripping. I'm blind. Like, fold me now. Okay, there we go. Wake Up. Dodge. There we go. The Vaseraga can OS a normal at that point. And not only do you look stupid, but you're probably about to die too. Wait. I am too used to net play. So, yeah, please don't do that. Please don't do that. I'm just gonna save your life right now. But yeah, that's about it for tackle. So next is the command throws. So yeah, 3, obviously light, medium, and heavy. Yeah, the light is like standard command throw fare. It does 2,000 damage, which is like only 500 more than a normal throw, which is 1,500. So if you do simple input command throw, it's basically doing an untackable normal throw. It's just like comparing damage anyway. The M version is an anti-air command grab. So you won't see this one too much because unlike Ladiva, he can't combo into his. Which is unfortunate, but what this does do is that it feels a very important purpose is that it covers his blind spot in terms of anti-airing. It is also a much faster anti-air than his 2H at 9 frames. So if you have like pesky Gran or Jita players like jumping over you for the cross up, like scoop them out. Generally scoop them out the air. So long as they don't get all the way behind you, you can do it just fine. My timing's bad, but also, I highly recommend using simple input. Because doing this, doing the command throw command in the heat of the moment is very iffy because it's like half circle back forward. So yeah, just use simple input if you really need it as an anti-air. Unless you're just that confident. And now for the H version, it has pretty much all the same, has the same damage numbers as the L version. However, it goes significantly farther while also being significantly slower. You're mainly only gonna use this if you like really need to close out that damage, or you have the read that they're gonna hold still at like a farther range where the L command throw will reach. Because the L command throw, after 2 normals, you won't be able to tick throw them without either assistance from stance or walking up. Oh yeah, not right. So EX command throw helps a lot in those situations. In terms of tick throwing though, you can do it after 1 normal. Yeah, you can generally do it after 1 normal. And in the like common stance situations. I'll get into stance after I talk about his supers, because stance is gonna be a mouthful. But yeah, those are the main important details. Just remember that after the second normal, he cannot tick throw you with like command throw without walking up first. Anti-air command grab covers the blind spot. And you use Ace command throw if you have the read. So, yeah, let's talk about the supers. So, let me put Vaseraga on the other side. So, I don't need these anymore. At least not right now. So it's SBA's Bloody Moon. This one... So this super's 11 frames, which is basically comparable to like Charlotta DP. Well, this is assuming that you're at point blank range. Without cutscene, it does a moderate chunk. But when you do get the full cutscene, it actually does quite a lot of damage. So it's almost 4,000. Due to the speed, it is a very strong super for hit confirming your pokes. When you have 100 meter, all his pokes can all of a sudden just lead to 3,000 damage. If you're like a third strike player and you can like really good at hit confirming the buttons, when you have 100 meter, all the supers basically turn your buttons into doing 3,000 damage without counter hit. It doesn't have the easiest time getting the cutscene, however. So, unless you're doing combos that are specifically meant to get the cutscene, there's not much of a downside to using easy input in comparison to the other supers. For a combo example where you are like highly likely to get cutscene, so let's say so this is one example. Oh wait, I'm dropping a lot today. So this combo has a pretty high chance to get the cutscene if you're doing it properly and you're sitting at the right range. However, on some characters you don't really get the cutscene like that. Randomly, he doesn't get the cutscene on himself. Is there an Oki difference for easy input on Vasa's supers? There is a slight difference. However, it does not matter because he can't really like meaty the opponent after these supers. Like for easy input Bloody Moon, unless he has you in the corner, he's generally not getting a meaty. If you do technical input, it's more reasonable to get the meaty, but you can still get the meaty regardless. It matters more in Aftermath, which I'll talk about in a minute. But for Bloody Moon, there's not too much reason to use technical input outside of like very specific combos. Generally, the rule for this is that if you are doing 2M before the super, like if you're doing 2M before the super, you have a very high chance of getting the cutscene. If you're doing like stance H, if you're doing like an anti-air combo and the like stance H in the super, you have a pretty likely chance to get cutscene if they're decently close. if you do EX Fireball in the corner, you also have a really good chance of getting cutscene here. However, this is assuming that it's not like mid-screen the corner. You need to be decently close for this. So, real easy example is doing this combo. Generally, you're going to want to do technical input for that super, so you can always get a cutscene when you're at the proper range. And also, in general, you want to use technical input whenever you're doing a corner combo, because he's far more likely to get cutscene in these situations. Other than those particular situations, though, you do not want to use... You don't really have much of a reason to use technical input. It's 5.8 without the extra normal. .9. You probably do this if you're close enough. Technical input, cutscene. Yeah. But yeah, keep that in mind when you're using Bloody Moon. Now, Aftermath is where the super is a bit abnormal. Yeah, I think abnormal is a good word for it. So... So, it's slower than Bloody Moon by a decent amount. It's 8 plus 7, so it's 15 frames. However, it has guard point on Wake Up instead of Invul. So, this is both a good thing and a bad thing. What's good about it is that if you are in the air jumping at him, unless you are Lancelot or Zeta, you are probably about to get freed up if he answers you with this. Because you'll be frozen by the guard point. Hitbox is pretty good, but just like his 2H, it has a pretty big blind spot, so you have to be careful. And since it's even slower than his 2H, you also have to be decently early, unless you risk the opponent trying to empty jump you. Alright. Now, what's bad about the guard point is that you pretty much can't use it when you're getting pressured by, like, normal staggers for a few reasons. The really obvious one is what I'm about to show you right now. So, I'm plus on block, I just use the jab, and I can react to the flash and spot dodge. And then you get hit by probably your opponent's most damaging non-counter hit combo. Because after this thing whiffs, it has a ton of recovery. Like, I have enough time to spot dodge it, run into position to do my combo, and then they just start looking stupid. I didn't get my super, but you get the point. However, just like normal armor, you need to be mindful of what frame advantage you were at, what normal you've been using, and what may contact. So, let's say I'm gonna put myself on -3. Yeah, I'm gonna put myself on -3 and then use jab. As you can see here, the jab hit decently late, and due to the hit stop, I got counter hit. And in this case, I'm using a medium button. Vasaraga's medium buttons have a lot of hit stop on them. So even though I'm plus, I'm still getting bodied here. So, what normals you can use here, in what situation, varies by character. So study up on what character can get away, on what your character can get away with. That's a bit late. So you have to study up on what your character can get away with. My character is mostly gonna be using jabs. Can you super back? Yes, you can super back. So long as you aren't stuck in hitbox, hit stop, you can do whatever you want. You just need to make sure that you're not stuck in hits. You just need to make sure that you're not stuck in hit stop for whatever you're doing. Because if you're stuck in hit stop, there's gonna be nothing you can do. You'll just get counter hit and then you're gonna look sad. But yeah, generally it's a really good anti-air, and it does some of the most damage in the game along with the divas, because it does 5,000 damage. It's like it does 5,000 damage raw. Cutscene activation range is decently large too. You would have to be absurdly at the tip of the hitbox in order for a cutscene not to activate when done with technical input. However, in comparison to a lot of other SSBAs, the Oki is pretty bad. If you don't use technical input, you don't really get much of anything. So you don't really have a lot of frame advantage to work with. You can't really safe jump, and they're kind of far away. So your best, like, move to, like, try to press advantage here is tackle. Or you can use stance here as well. Yeah, if you have stance, using EX stance there is pretty good for, like, mounting offense. If you have armor, anyway. Normal stance, you're not really gonna get the proper positioning to get, like, to force them to get between stance C or command throw. Yeah, you won't be close enough. Unless you jump through some hoops and, like, use unless you're really good at like doing run up 2-2, you're probably gonna have to use simple input for normal stance if you want to try to like mount something there. Otherwise, you're probably gonna return back to neutral if you don't have tackle or stance there. But speaking of stance, it's time to talk about it. Because now, we're in for the, like, mouthful of this stream. Okay, I got Gran on screen. It's pretty much every option I need to talk about. Okay, so before I get to the attacks, we're gonna talk a little bit about the actually going into it. So, light, medium, which takes a step back, and EX, where he just starts automatically walking forward. So, light. So the stance attacks in both light and medium are all the same. EX is the only time where like the stance attacks get altered in a meaningful way. All stance follow-ups can be held to delay them. However, outside of one stance move, the properties on block and hit don't really change. That one attack being stance H, which I'll talk about when I get to it. On stance L, he can make a stance follow-up come out on frame 15. So, if I were to say do the math, since you get the stance follow-up on frame 15, and his stance L is 12 frames, this makes immediate stance L, like immediate stance L, from like 2-2L, 27 frames. So if you do close H and the 2-2LL as fast as you can, it is a 5 frame gap. So it's a proper frame trap. And then you go so on and so forth. M stance cannot be cancelled until a sizable difference later, at least 5 frames. I did not test the hard numbers because it's really hard to do that. And the numbers on going in the stance is a bit wrong at the moment. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it took 22 frames for M stance to be able to do stuff, but I know for a fact that L stance, you get stance moves on frame 15. Otherwise, he would not be able to frame trap from here. Stance H, you can do follow-ups on frame 14. Frame 15 is when the stomp is gonna hit. So you can act a frame earlier in comparison to L stance, but you have to be a little bit careful because you move a bit forward. But in terms of attacks, in terms of like follow-ups, he can cancel out of stance by pressing 4-4. This is stance L, which is the anti-air. Stance M is the low. Stance H is the overhead smash. Stance U is the side stomp. And pressing 6-8 will make him walk. He will do 4 steps and then he'll stop. And you can basically just keep walking until they do something. So, let's talk about the moves one by one. Yeah, one by one. So, stance L. This is the only stance move that is plus on blocking. Normal version is +1, EX version is +8. If you were to say, do it at this range, you can technically keep pressure. If they blocked it, that is. There's one problem that this move does have is that it whiffs on crouching opponents. However, if you were doing crouching attacks, it can still hit you. So it works just like Ladiva Lariat in that regard. However, this mainly comes into play when you're like decently close to me. Yet it mainly comes into play when you're close to the Vaseraga. Otherwise, you don't have to worry too much about it just hitting you. So, since it has the least amount of recovery, it's this best option when he thinks you're gonna spot dodge during steps. So like, I'm choosing the frame trap with stance L instead of like using stance H. So in this case, let me set standing just to make sure I'm not making it 2 block strength. If you frame trap with it properly, you'll be plus on the spot dodge. If you did it with EX, you can punish them for spot dodging. Oh wait, whoops. So yeah, something to keep in mind if you don't have a DP. Because if you don't have a DP, you're going to be doing this, you're going to have to like do a lot of guessing here. Even more than like other characters. So just, yeah, keep this in mind. As you can tell by the way the animation looks, it is a fantastic anti-air. It hits very high and very far. And I'll also show another tidbit about stance along with this. Is that stance can auto-correct when you do the stance moves that are not command throws. If it's not a command throw or walking, you can use stance. The stance moves will auto-correct. This makes jumping very risky. Yeah, it makes jumping very risky unless you're Matera or Fairy. Yeah, Matera, Fairy, or Lancelot. So, on counter hit, you can get combos. However, it varies on where you are on the screen and which version of stance you used. So mid-screen, if I counter hit, let's just say I got counter hit stance L from a step. Generally, you're not getting anything too crazy mid-screen. Yeah, you can't really get anything too crazy. If it counter hits as an anti-air, however, mid-screen, you can very consistently link in the super. Unless they're really far away. Yeah, unless they're really far away, if stance L counter hits in the air, you can pretty much always link in the super. If you're greedy, you can get some normals, but you mainly want to reserve that for the corner. In the corner, if this hits an airborne opponent, they're probably going to lose the game. I'm going to just be real. You're probably losing the game. Like... That's not using any EX moves, and not using, like, and that's only using stance. That's not using any EX moves, but you have both, but you have, like, pretty much all your special moves on hand. You basically lose. EX, there's a few instances where you get combos off of EX. One is that if you make them block an EX stance L at point blank range, this basically only happens when you do EX stance L immediately without making the stomp hit. That'll get you a point blank range. Since it's a guard break and you're +8, you technically get a free far L. However, your follow-ups are a bit limited because of the normal you're using and distance. You'll mostly have to resort to just taking a super. Yeah, you're only getting blade mode. You're not really getting anything. Otherwise, it's just like extra chip. You can basically just treat it like extra chip. However, if it counter hits, this is where it gets a little juicy. So, from a step in like a frame trap situation, the easiest follow-up is, of course, just do super. The easiest follow-up is to do super. It'll do a sizable chunk of damage. Like, you'll get 4K. Pretty bad timing is frame trap right now. Yeah, you're too far to do that mid-screen, but you can do that in the corner if you're still, like, a little bit too far away for 2U. The other option is to do far M into B tackle. Which will be roughly 2.8 to 3K in damage if they take the chip. And since you're doing the B tackle meaty, even if they spot dodge it, you'll still be at a good advantage. Let me see if I can do close down. Yeah, you'll be able to punish the spot dodgers if they try something like that. So yeah, if they don't have a DP, that's a really good option for you. You just get a sizable amount of damage and carry. In the corner, Yeah, in the corner, your combo option is a little bit difficult. So you have to... So you have options. You can go into... You can generally go in the EX Fireball and do stuff from there. You can get a close H, but that link is a little hard because you have to micro dash first. But it's definitely the optimal thing to do because you're using the least amount of stuff whilst getting the most damage. You'll just have to easy input the tackle. One option that doesn't use your cooldowns though actually that might be your only option. Yeah, because I don't think you get... Yeah, you don't get sweep easily. You got to... Yeah, that link's going to take a little bit of practice, but generally, you should be fine. You can just default to that one instead if you're having trouble. But generally, if EX stance L counter hits, I would recommend being ready to spend some cooldowns. Because you get a really beefy amount of damage. If EX stance L anti-airs, even without the counter hit, if they're high enough, you can get super from a reliable amount of parts of the screen. Well, if they're close enough anyway. If they're close enough to you, you get super pretty consistently. If they're high enough. You just have to be good. You have to be good at spotting it, however. On counter hit, it's super becomes more consistent. Yeah, super becomes more consistent because they're higher up in the air. You can adjust, easier to adjust. If they're really high, you can do a small combo. But this is going to require a bit out of you, so just bear that in mind. I would not try this unless it's like point blank counter hit. Yeah, I wouldn't try it unless it's like point blank counter hit in the air. Just keep in mind that you can like get a combo here. Otherwise, I highly recommend either going into super or trying to like hit a sweep. Because due to sweep's range, it's decently reasonable to get the sweep if you get an air counter hit. It just takes a bit of practice. But if they're low to the ground, 9 times out of 10, you're probably not going to get a normal. Because this general run speed is not the fastest. Next, let's talk about stance M. This is the stance's only low option, but it also doubles as the stance's longest range option. It does the same amount of damage as stance L does at 1,500. This also means it does the same amount of chip. Yeah, does the same amount of chip. The normal version is -10, but the EX version is -4. That's the main difference between the two, is that the EX version has less recovery. On counter hits, you get combos, but again, it depends on where you are on the screen. So, if I were to say, at point, I did a frame trap. I did a frame trap mid-screen from step. Easiest option is the link into 2M. Yeah, link into 2M into EX stance. If you're in normal stance already. I recommend practicing this link. It's a little awkward at first, but yeah, combo super looks something like that. EX stance M slightly different. Due to the reduced recovery, you have a few more options. Is that if it's in a situation where you did a step frame trap, you can link in the sweep. It's like you can link in the sweep, you can link in the far M, or you can just link in the raw super. Just practice the link so you don't drop it. You can still link in the 2M, but you preferably would just want to link in the 2U. It's more damage. And you're not really going to do much more after the sweep. Unless you, say, got a counter hit stance follow-up at point blank range. But there's one situation where that comes up quite often, but I'll get to in a bit. Other than that, though, the main purpose of this one is to do chip at range, because you make the block far H, you're generally out of range to try to chip with stance M, or if you want to like check people like mashing DP, that characters that are not Lancelot anyway, because his DP has a really annoying input because it's 2-2. But pretty much everybody else, you can like try to check the DP input. But yeah, you generally have a decent amount of leeway on how long you can delay. But yeah, if you don't have armor, you're going to be using M follow-up a lot. Mainly EX though, because in some matchups, stance M in normal stance is actually not that good of an option when you're at close range. Like Catalina comes to mind, Fairy, Jita. Generally characters that have a good amount of range. They can generally punish stance M decently well when done at point blank or from like a close range step into it. Since normal stance M is -10 on block. In terms of spot dodge, this one normal stance M is pretty vulnerable to it. If you try to frame trap with it, that is. You're punishable a lot of the time. Like even if when done as like a really tight frame trap, you're still punishable. However, when done with EX and you do a tight frame trap, you can be plus on spot dodge, but you're not always going to get the perfect timing. So you're probably going to be like even or slightly minus. but you generally won't be punishable in spot dodge. So next move, stance H. Outside of stance L, this is the second fastest stance attack. Because stance L is 12, but stance H is 15. So, slightly slower. However, it has a good amount of perks to it. One is that it does the most damage at 2,000, along with stance U. It's 2,000 damage. The other two do 1,500. Let me turn this off. So, so it does the most damage, which also means it does the most chip. So yeah, stance H does the most chip damage out of the attack, out of like the stance attacks, along with stance U. But this is the main one you're going to be using for chip, because this one's only -4 on block. And it don't. However, one big downside that stance H has that the others don't is that it has very few active frames in comparison to the other ones, while still having a lot of recovery. So, stance H only has 2 active frames, while having 31 frames of recovery. Stance L, while it has only 3 active frames, it only has 21 frames of recovery, and when done from EX, it has only 14 frames of recovery. Hence why I often call EX stance L plus on whiff. Like, because EX stance L only has... Yeah, because EX stance L only has 29 total frames. So, like, recognizing that this happened without specifically looking for it can be a bit difficult for a lot of people, especially online. Like, online, this might as well be a pressure reset if they don't have a DP. Like, but, yeah, stance H, due to the abundance of recovery and the lack of active frames, it's quite vulnerable to spot dodge. Block. When done as a frame trap, you'll very consistently be punchable. There are very few cases where the only time where you'd probably be safe is that if you do a perfectly timed frame trap. Like, those are the only times where you'll be quote-unquote safe. But not only is that hard to do because you have to manually time it, it's not ideal. Because sometimes you want to leave a bit of space so they can, like, make the wrong decision. Give them a false sense of security. However, the main reason why you use this follow-up on offense, like outside of combos, is that this follow-up, whenever it hits an airborne opponent or If it counter hits, your opponent pretty much loses the game. Let me just do an example. Like, the person jumped. I slightly delay the fall just to, like, give him a false sense of security. And then you just do the whole combo. They lose, like, over 5,000 damage. And all that good stuff. You're laughing, they're crying. So if it counter hits, even better. Yeah, let me set it to a block initial hit. Oh yeah, I have him jumping, so let me take that off. So he's like, the basic combo does 5k. If they're closer than that, you can get even more damage. But this is assuming that you're frame trapping them at their step. If you're frame trapping them at their step, you're not gonna be able to, like, get the absolute max damage unless you have them cornered. In the corner, there's a bit more you get the max damage more consistently in, like, the frame trap scenario. Just like, you get to do so much damage. Whoopsie. Actually, wait. I'm doing the combo wrong. If I remember correctly, I do it like this. Yeah. Oh god. Well, without the fireball, it does something. It looks more like this. This is still too much damage, though. Because if they get hit by this, you probably messed up badly. But yeah, y'all get the picture. I keep dropping it. I've been dropping a lot today. Yeah, this is basically, I know you're doing something other than blocking button or spot dodging. That's all you really need to know about that one. So, lastly, Stance U. So this one has infinite armor. Yeah, this is the follow-up with infinite armor, and just to show for people that yeah, this follow-up has infinite armor, and it has armor no matter if you have Soulforge or not. Does 2,000 damage just like Stance H. However, it is minus 11 on block, and the normal version is really slow at 28 frames. The EX version is a bit faster. I don't have an exact number for the EX version, however. But it's definitely faster than the normal version by a decent margin. the main use for this one... yeah, the main use for this one is dealing with DPs when you're going through stance offense. Because with practice, you can generally react to the DP if you're waiting on it. However, how hard it is varies by character. You can't do it to Lil Wayne, parry, and Charlotta EX DP / parry. However, for everybody else, you can do it so long as you learn when you need to input it. So, for example, Gran and Jita fall into the same category because their DPs basically work the same way. So, put this here. So, for light DP, let me give myself Soulforge back. So, for light DP, since there's only 2 hits, if you recognize that they're doing light DP, then all you really have to do is just keep walking and kill them. However, if they do medium or EX DP, you will have to act accordingly. So for medium, you can act after the first hit and after the second hit. This, due to the hit style, you have a lot of time to respond. You just need to practice the timing on letting go so they don't fly behind you and then you get punished for whiffing. This mainly comes up if you're in EX stance. There you go. Normal stance is pretty much auto time. But for EX, you need to practice on when to let go. EX DP, on the other hand, you can only act after the second hit because of how fast like the first and second hits are together. The hit stop keeps you from acting. So you have to act on the second hit and get the U out. However, if you use normal stance, you might be in trouble because the DP can just clash if you just let go too early. So for EX DP, hold it for a little bit longer and then let go. Catalina and Narmaya fall into the same category as well. Yeah, if it clashes, you get your cancel options. You want to avoid that as the Voss player. So for Narmaya, and Cat, they have to use their EX DPs every time if you have armor. For Cat, you cannot use normal stance on her unless you feel like making a hard read. Because since normal stance you is so slow, you have to stance you on a read, and you don't want to do that. However, if you're in EX stance, you can do it on reaction. You just have to you have to react to the first hit of the DP hitting you. Takes practice, but you can get it done. But the last DP I'll probably want to talk about is Percival, since he's his own category. Actually, no, Percival and Fairy fall into the same category. Yeah, Percival and Fairy, they have a ton of hit stop on their DPs, which makes them easier to react to, and there's like a sizable gap in between each hit. So even if you have like one hit of armor remaining, you can generally you can generally have a lot of leeway to stance the U on reaction. You just have to know it's coming. Yeah, you can do it on the first. You can do it on the first hit rather easily. However, for Percival in particular, he can get put on the spot in a few unique ways due to how the DP's hits are handled. So if you have the read, you can hold a stance follow-up to have it hit, to have your stance follow-up counter hit him around the time that the third hit of his DP is about to hit you, because the invuln runs out by the second hit. And you can just kill him that way. Other than that, his DP and Fairy's DP, you treat them roughly the same way. So with all this in mind, what exactly do you do as a defender? So there's few universal things you can do. So generally your options is mainly just blocking it out, spot dodging, throwing, and jump. These are the main four. If you have a DP, obviously you have that too, but I'm gonna assume you don't have a DP. Or it's not available. So generally, throwing will stop Vaseraga from just walking on you. You mainly default to throw and not mashing, because if the Vaseraga has armor, mashing basically makes it so that you have to guess twice to get out. You want to mitigate the guessing as much as possible. Oh god, these daily times are so long. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna have him walk. So generally, you can throw him in between the steps so long as you time it properly. However, one important thing to keep in mind is that timing the throw steps between normal and EX steps are different. Because normal steps are slower, you need to like time the throw. For EX, you basically have to mash out the throw. However, throwing loses to the Vaseraga frame trapping. Like either frame trapping or like spacing out the follow-up. Because if the Vaseraga steps and just like delays the follow-up, he'll space himself out. Your throw will whiff and then you'll get punished. If they of course, if they frame trap it, you're gonna die. Yeah, you take the counter hit, and then you're about to die right there. So use this if you think they're gonna keep walking on you, and they have armor on. Otherwise, when they don't have armor and they keep walking, you can just mash instead. But just be mindful of what you're risking when you decide to mash. Now, spot dodging is what you use if you think they're gonna frame trap you with something that's not stance L, and you don't have a DP. Because if I try to frame trap with stance H, I really need to set this to first hit only. There we go. Yeah, if you do this... Oh, I don't have socks. Then you get a punish. Do the thing. Of course, with EX stance M, you're generally not going to get a punish, but it's going to be your turn unless they perfectly timed it. For stance L, however, it'll still be their turn. You just won't take the extra chip. Or if it's EX stance L, you'll get punished. But generally, you use this if you think they're trying to just outright win the game right there. Another important bit is that if you guess wrong on the spot dodge, and they recognize that fact, because they were waiting on the spot dodge in particular, you can also lose the game right here. It not only will the stance move counter hit, but they'll basically be in point blank range to you. So they get the best combo that they can get mid-screen. Last but not least is, of course, jumping. The main thing jumping is for is that you mainly use it to avoid the command throw. That's basically it. Use it to avoid the command throw. If you jump the command throw, you get a punish. It loses to the Vaseraga doing literally anything else. Or in some cases, depending on how you jumped and what character you are, you could probably lose the game off that jump too. At best, you'll take a stance L. At worst, you'll get anti-air by stance H. So yeah, just be mindful of that. As I was talking about earlier with the DPs, DPs is really strong when he doesn't have armor, because he generally does not have a lot to deter you. One thing he can do is just use his stance as a getaway to just like get really long range command throw attempts instead. So if he's standing like right here, he could just do... Yeah, he could just use the stance to command throw from there instead. And the most that you can do is just try to guess DP earlier than you would expect to. He can do this with normal stance as well. It's just like you can still like recognize that he's going into stance. So you just have to be mindful of what you're doing. But they still have to see if the command throw's coming. They can't just like try to jump out the way. And if you're doing it from close H, they can't just mash, because you have the option to frame trap them. If they do have armor, then DP will beat both frame trap and command throw. It will lose to them just keep on walking. So, which is why it's important to show that you are willing to throw. Because taking 2,000 damage, while it's not as bad as taking 5,000 damage, it's still a healthy chunk. You can't afford to take too many of those. I should talk about a few character-specific ones. So, for Lowain, parry and Charlotta's trait, they can use this as a replacement for throw. They can use their parries as a replacement for throw, when they don't want to risk taking like 5,000 damage, because it basically fulfills the same purpose. So if the Vaseraga keeps walking, you can use parry. Better yet, you don't even really need to use EX parry for Lil Wayne. You can just use normal parry. Because Lil Wayne's parry ignores the armor. However, it loses to all the same. So it basically loses to any like varying of the timing. Like the same timing I would use to beat. Yeah, the same time I would use to beat like jumping, I can use it to beat the parry. Yeah, I generally use that timing for stance C to try to like. Yeah, I have to delay more than that. I think that would only work for EX parry. Oh, I didn't delay it enough at all. But yeah, it loses to command throw and like really delayed stance follow-ups. Yeah, it loses like. Dang, I have to delay it even harder than that. But generally, they're gonna command throw you a lot if you start trying to parry. So just like plan accordingly. Yeah, works the same way for Charlotta as well. However, her parry needs to be a point-blank range. Well, your hurt box needs to come in contact with her in order for the parry to fully go off properly. However, Charlotta is a very specific case. Because Charlotta, you can't use stance in the traditional way against her because of how her defensive options work. Because her EX DP her EX DP does the hits constantly back to back. So, if you're caught walking and you did not like press 5U before you got hit, the EXDP will just put you on the floor and then you're going to be looking very angry. And then when she doesn't have the EXDP, she can also just parry, so it's like you're not gonna really get like the really big hits. Unless you use it in more unorthodox places. So against her, you're going to be using a lot of M stance to make things whiff, and a lot of like close H in the stance situations. Because these are the such things that you can actually make her like slip up and make her take a lot of damage. Fairy and Matera, I feel it's like... Actually, yeah, let me just do Fairy and Matera now. Yeah, Fairy and Matera have, like, really good ways to change their air momentum. So jumping away from stance is less risky for them. Zeta against stance is kinda bad. So, her guard point, if Vaseraga has armor, well, actually, even if he doesn't, if you make so long as you react accordingly to what's happening, like you recognize that the stomp hit the guard point, you can immediately start holding stance U. And then once the follow-up hits you, you just let go. However, one important thing that you need to keep in mind when doing it is that if your normal stance, that doesn't really work out with U follow-up, you will need EX stance if you want to do it without armor. However, when you do have armor, you can just use stance H instead. Yeah, as soon as the next stomp hits, you just let go. Do your work. And she can't really do anything about it. The most that she can do when she sees the stomp make contact is to try to throw off your timing if you get too greedy with stance H. Otherwise, she's still gonna die. Yeah, the last one that you have to be mindful about is... Yeah, I think the last one of note is Beelzebub, actually. Oh, wait. I forgot about Ladiva. Yeah, so Beelzebub and Ladiva. So, Beelzebub, in particular, is very bad against this offense, even though he has a DP. The reason for this is that the DP is only one hit. So just waiting or just delaying your follow-up in accordance to when you think they're about to DP is enough to kill him. You'll hit him pretty much every time. Even though he has a DP, he has to risk the throw. So, Ladiva is the last one. So, she's usually really bad against stance, actually. Because the only thing that changes for her is that instead of normal throwing, she command throws instead. Which is, like, basically more damage if you guess right on throwing the stance. But other than that, she has... One really important option is that the fact that she has a 720 throw that actually has some decent range on it. So what this means is that when she has SSBA, or she has her command throw ready, you have to be very mindful about how you structure these things. Because if you try to frame trap, you're gonna eat a 720 into like 5,000 damage. The only way you can really stop this is if you space out your step. You have to mix up from the first step. So that this way, if you try to frame trap, the command throw will whiff. That's your only real option. You have to mix up from the first step, and nothing farther than that. Yeah, other than that though, things don't get too much different. Although I probably should mention Lancelot, since I know there's like a decent amount of Lancelot players. Ugh. So the main thing for Lancelot is that his 2-2H makes it very dangerous to command throw. Yeah, his 2-2H makes it very dangerous to command throw. Yeah, 2-2H makes it very dangerous to command throw. But, however, it doesn't do as much to the frame traps as you would expect because of how long it takes. Even though he can technically get out of the frame trap situation easier than most, he still needs to guess more than once. Unless I did stance heavy, because other than that point, unless I have SSBA, he'll have his turn. But yeah, if he like does it the stance H, he'll have his turn. If you do it the stance L or M, you'll be fine. Stance L in particular, Lancelot will be at risk of getting counter hit, so he has to do something. I'm really having a hard time doing this. I think that still decently gets the point across in the fact that he recovers very quickly. So the Lancelot player will have to like respond accordingly. Yeah, Lancelot player will have to respond accordingly, and if they respond wrong, they could potentially die. So it's just something to keep track of. Other than that, that's about it in terms of how stance works. Yeah, I think that's about it for the stuff I really wanted to talk about. So if anyone has any questions, I can answer them now, actually. Dang, I rambled for how long? About 3.5 hours. Dang. Dang, it'd be that way. What does holding the button do? So, by holding the button for most of the attacks, all it does is delay the move. So, the obvious use for this is that it allows you to take better advantage of the armor and allow you to take more advantage of different spacings. Because you don't want to always keep moving forward when you try to delay the attack. Oh, I'll be uploading this to YouTube after I'm done. Don't worry about that. But, however, the one exception to this is stance H. So, if you hold stance H all the way, it becomes a plus 16 on block guard break. So, this means he can link to you afterwards. So, you'll look something like... Or optimally, you'll probably do something like this to mitigate what cooldowns you're using. Oh, I messed up. But you get the idea. So generally, if you think this is coming when I'm holding it down like this, and I do not blame you for people that think that, because I rarely hold it down like that. So what you want to do is that there's a specific timing to where you'll always be able to dodge this, like the fully charged one, while not having to worry about the other times it could possibly hit you. So you generally just want to practice, like, just make the dummy do like various charge timings and make it so that you dodge, that you always dodge the unblockable version, but you block the others. Because generally, this shouldn't really be hitting you like that. Like, you shouldn't really be getting unblockable. This is generally something that you do once and then never again. The one time, however, where you can't really do what I just said is that when you can command throw in the corner, and then you try to do something like that, this is when it can actually get a bit hairy. Because if you try the spot dodge, carelessly, he can just let go early and then kill you. So yeah, if you flinch too early in this situation, he can generally let go early and then punish the spot dodge. So just make sure you're not too flinchy. So just bear that in mind. So that answers that question. Now, was there anyone else? Don't be afraid to ask. Especially if it's like something matchup specific. I don't mind answering those. Anyone? I don't know if anyone asked, but how do you deal with a very late turn there, dash late? So yeah, someone asked me this in like a different stream, just not this particular stream. So since Vaseraga doesn't really have a DP, his reactionary options to anti-airing Matera Hop is kind of annoying. So let's assume like you know that Hop is coming. So if you know the Hop is coming, you can use stance L. I mean far L. I'm tripping. If you know it's coming and you see it, you can use far L. If you have the read, you can 2H and basically win the game. But generally, if you don't feel confident in your reactions, you're gonna want to use far L. At this range, you're probably going to be stuck with 2H. Because he's too fat to really take advantage of roll. So you're going to have to guess a bit here. You can also... If you think they're gonna use stand like JM, 2L becomes an option. Mainly due to hitbox, hurtbox interactions, which is quite common. You have to delay it a bit. Yeah, you have to delay the 2L a bit, but, there you go. If they do JM, they're giving you the most time to try to hit them. But that only works if they do JM. For the other buttons, you're gonna have to use a more universal answer. So, but if you're in the corner, your best option is generally to go for the 2H read. Fuzzy jumping generally gets you hit. Gets you hit by the JM if you do it too early. So, the only times where you really even want to fuzzy jump or fuzzy mash is if you think they're about to go for a really cheeky low. But like your main anti-air options are generally far L, 2L if you think they're about the JM, because they JM that gives you the most time to do something, and 2H if you have the read, and if you have Soulforge, you can use either. Well, you can use 5U if they're early, but if they're not stupid, they can generally block in time. So 5U isn't really that good of an option. You can also use armor 2H to give yourself a little bit more time. Just be careful. Yeah, armor 2H will give you a little bit more time, but that doesn't mean it's gonna hit all the time. Just practice holding 2H just long enough to give it armor, so that way it's consistent at hitting. What's another answer? Oh yeah, you can also use EX stance if you want. Since it's frame 5 armor, but you're still standing straight up, so be careful not to react too late. But if you think that hop is coming and you have armor, stance, EX stance is a really good option too if you have it. Specifically when you have armor. But yeah, that's about it in terms of your anti-air options though. Well, aside from SSBA, but you're not always going to have that. No more seeing spooky tournaments. Yeah, I haven't really had the drive to play in many tournaments. And this game's net play has me feeling some type of way. So I generally only really play people that I know now. Were there any other questions before I hop off the stream? Anyone? Keep in mind, if it's for fighting against Vaseraga, I'm more than welcome to answer those. That's part of the reason why I'm doing this. Oh, nice, we got one. Alright, what we got? Kitsune, is that how you pronounce it? Ver, could you be more specific? Like, what particularly about the cat matchup? I guess while I wait for Kitsune to type out his question. How do you deal with armor charge? Are you talking about armored tackles? Like these moves when it's armored? Like the usual works? Okay, so generally you have a few options to work with. It generally is going to vary by character. When it comes to the tackles in particular, if your character does not have like a really good DP at dealing with it, or like a really good super at dealing with it, you're gonna have to like learn to spot dodge these tackles on reaction. Particularly the A version where he has his like face towards the screen. Because he cannot delay this version of the tackle. If you react fast enough, you'll make the tackle minus, or like slightly even, which against some characters can give him his turn, give you your turn, because he does not have a 5-frame normal. For B tackle, if you dodge this, like even if you react late, you have to react really late for him to be plus on this one. However, if you react decently early on like B tackle, you can get punishes. However, for B and EX tackle, he can delay them. So, I recommend like getting some sound, because he has different audio clips for each tackle. For EX, throw spot dodging out the window, because spot dodging EX tackle is inconsistent. However, if the Vaseraga player decides to hold down the tackle, I highly recommend, if you did not flinch, you just jump over the tackle and then punish with a jump in. The tackles have a decent amount of recovery, so you can afford to jump. I don't recommend jumping forward just in case they get big brained. Yeah, I recommend jumping away from the Vaseraga. So that way, if they get big brain and they have SSBA, you don't die for it. On offense, you're gonna have to look at the VOD, because I kinda don't want to go through like 30 minutes of explanation again. Or better yet, I can also link you my doc if you want it in Word form and you feel like reading it now. It has its own section in my doc, so I can also link that too. But in terms of like stance in neutral, that I can talk about right now. So, one moment. So, oh, whoops, I copy and paste the whole message. Yeah, that's the Google Doc. Go all the way down to the stance section, and then like past the stance moves, it should be the stance section. But you also should read the armor section too, just so you know how armor works. But in terms of stance in neutral, this I can talk about. It highly depends on what your character has. So if you're like Catalina, and you have EX Fireball, if I stance in neutral from around back here, you have a really strong reactionary answer to me just going in the stance, unless it's like EX stance L. If I try to like walk up for like more than one step, you can generally EX Fireball on reaction, and I can't really do anything much. However, if you do not have those that kind of option, or if you have to get like really close, like around here, then you're gonna have to weigh the risk reward of attacking and giving up real estate. So, like for example, if Kat does not have EX Fireball, her moves are generally pretty bad at dealing with armor unless she gets all the way up in my face in EX DPs. So, I can generally use that against her. and just like start swinging stance moves early. If you don't feel like you're gonna have the read, you can just back up, but don't back up too much, because if you get put in the corner, you're gonna have no choice but to do something. Just see how the Vaseraga player is reacting to what you're doing and plan accordingly. Yeah, I think that should do it for that question. Did anyone else have any questions? I can answer like one or two more. No problem. I'll give until like 1 a.m. for someone to ask. I guess that's the end then. It's almost time. Yeah, I guess no one else. Yeah, I guess that's it. So, yeah, I am surprised that even, like, more than 10 people stayed for longer than an hour. I'll upload, I'll, like, export the VOD to YouTube. But for now, I think I'm going to head out. So if anyone missed it, I'll just get the VOD exported and like try to timestamp it. So anyway, I'll see y'all later.